Now, it's easy for us to sit back and chuckle at those Israelites who are they always seemed miserable about everything. And oftentimes when we talk about the Israelites in the wilderness, we talk about the bickering people who couldn't just appreciate what God had done for them. But what had God done for them? Led them out of a place. Yeah, they were slaves. That was awful. And certainly they were oppressed. But they led them out of slavery into a desert with no seeming end in sight. They're just wandering around and around and around. Now, they are constantly bickering and complaining. They never seem to completely get the big picture. They never seem to completely, they seem to completely disrespect and disregard Moses, who literally risked everything to pull their exodus from Egypt off. Did he not? So it seems right for us to say, what about these Israelites? They're miserable about everything. But let us, for a brief moment, entertain this story with a little fairness and understanding. Moses flees for his life from Egypt because he murdered somebody in anger, because he saw them beating a slave. And he suddenly decides one day to return to Egypt and to tell Pharaoh, who he fled from, to let his people go. Now you can imagine how this goes. You're a fugitive, right? You're a fugitive. And you show up, Pharaoh, I'm back. But before you arrest me, I just want you to let my people go. Now you can imagine how that goes over. But what does Pharaoh do? Does he punish Moses for this? No, he doesn't punish Moses. He punishes the Hebrews, who didn't ask for Moses to return in the first place. And he tells them now they have to work doubly as hard with doubly less resources, and they had better finish the task at hand or they'd get beaten for it. So they're not very happy that Moses came back and decided to save them, because he wasn't saving them as far as they could see. He was making their existence even more miserable. Finally, after many plagues and horrible things, Pharaoh relents. He lets them go. But then he changes his mind, and he chases after them to re-enslave them. I'm sure the Israelites, looking back and seeing the trail of smoke from this massive army coming out to capture them, is making them go, Moses, what did you do? Lead us out here to die? Which one of us wouldn't respond the same way? We see how we responded after 9/11. Just imagine how we would respond if we were the Israelites being led out into the desert. Can you imagine the emotional roller coaster ride these very Hebrews were riding on? They escape and wait for Moses for 40 days and nights at the base of some strange mountain. They think he's maybe gotten lost. Maybe he died. Who knows? 40 days and 40 nights and he still hasn't come down off the mountain. Will he ever come down off the mountain? So they take matters into their own hands. They create a golden calf. Now when Moses comes down and sees it, he becomes angry, incensed, and has 3,000 people put to death for building the golden calf. Moses, what have you done? Led us out here to die? Can you imagine? You followed this guy to the mountain. He left you for 40 days and 40 nights. You get a little afraid. You do something rash, perhaps, maybe. And you're killed for it. Or your brother's killed for it. Or your sister's killed for it. Think about it. Then to make matters worse, they are endlessly wandering, as I said earlier, through the wilderness. eating a fluffy bread-like substance, and quail. Now, I don't know about you. I don't eat chicken anymore, and I try to abstain as much as I can from bread. But I remember chicken when Bernie, she'll hear this later, I'm sure. Bernadette likes chicken a lot, and she'll cook chicken 4 or 5 times a week if she could, because she likes it, and that's fine. But I don't know about you. After a while, enough's enough with the chicken, right? I can only imagine quail is the same way. How much quail can I eat, God? Could you send something else? Could you, maybe, okay, I get not the pig, maybe some goat or
a cow.
A cow! Bring a cow! Please, even a cow. Heck, I'll even go vegan, just no more quail, you know? And bread? Bread's good. I like my bread. But if all I'm eating is bread and quail, I'm going to get pretty sick of it. And we're not talking about a week of bread and quail. We're not talking a month of bread and quail. We're not even talking a year of bread and quail. We're talking 40 long years of bread and quail. And the only water they can get is when Moses gets angry enough to knock a rock and water comes pouring from it. So you can imagine how these people are feeling. Moses, have you let us out here just to die? We would have been better off as slaves in Egypt. We ate better there. Heck, we were treated better there because at least we had shelter over our heads. We're scorching out here in the sun. And now you want us to carry this golden ark. Okay, nice. Nice. Then as our text reads tonight, they end up running into serpents in the wilderness. Or as it should have read tonight anyway. They end up running into snakes in the wilderness, getting bitten by it, and many of them die. Now, of course, the Bible writes in that it was a judgment from God. Judgment or not, they're getting bitten by serpents in the wilderness. Go figure, right? Serpents in the wilderness. Who would have thought they were there? Of course they're there. Talk about adding insult to injury. Are the people then being unreasonable and demanding an answer of Moses? Have you led us out here to die? We would have been better off as slaves in Egypt. They're sick of wandering. They're sick of food. They're sick of Moses. Enough with Moses already. Aaron, just build us a calf, Like, we don't care about Moses. Let him die up on the mountain. We're done with him. Now let me ask, how many of you have felt this way? How many of you have felt sick of a miserable existence of a life? Now, I'm not saying all around. Like, I'm sure there are days where you don't think your life's a miserable existence, but there are days, honestly, if I'm going to be honest, I wake up and go, another day. What a miserable existence. All I do is get up, work, come home, go to sleep, get up, work, and it goes over and over and over again. And I know I'm not the only one that gets up and works, so it can't just be me. What the Israelites failed to realize, though, and perhaps we fail to realize it as well, is that they are the ones that are delaying the journey. They are the ones that are delaying the journey because they continue living in fear instead of faith. God never said that God was going to deliver them from Egypt and take them on the highway, the fast way, to another land where everything would be milky and wonderful and go easy. Yeah, it was a land flowing with milk and honey, but he didn't say whose milk and honey it was flowing with. He didn't say it was going to be easy. God said, trust in me, and I will get you there. But they continually, over and over and over again, became afraid and reacted on their fear, much as we do. I know I'm not the only one who has acted at some point in his life on my fear. I'm sure each and every one of us has. But it's because we do that we end up delaying getting to where God wants to bring us. It is their fear that the Israelites had kept, it is their fear that had kept them wandering in circles. I don't know if you're familiar with the geography, but to go from Egypt, right, Egypt, up, across the Red Sea, it's just up here, right? And you've got Jerusalem, you've got Israel, right? Just, right? But they're wandering for what would have maybe at tops, taken them a month or so, who knows, maybe a little longer because they got a whole bunch of people and they're wandering through a hot desert, but it would not have taken them 40 years to go up to by the Mediterranean Sea. But because they're afraid, because they're scattered, because they're not all heading in the direction that God wants them to go, they're wandering in circles for 40 years. 40 years. It's their fear that caused them to build a golden calf. Because they weren't sure where Moses was. And maybe God had abandoned them. Or maybe that wasn't God at all, so we'll build ourselves one. It is their fear that led them to rebel against Moses' leadership, which led them into a fatal conflict with Moses' leadership, with Moses. It is their fear that led them into more danger than they needed to be with the serpents. Granted, they probably would have run into serpents along the way from there to Canaan, but not 40 years worth of them, right? So, it was their fear that kept them wandering in the wilderness, and it was their wandering in the wilderness that got them frustrated and made them wonder why Moses brought them out there to begin with. And it was for lack of seeing the bigger picture, which Moses did have the faith to see, though even sometimes he succumbed to his fears. Moses overall had the big picture because he opened himself up to God's big picture. But because they didn't see the big picture, they brought their own problems upon their head. And quite frankly, I don't think, as much as they thought Moses was a pain for them, I don't think they realized how much of a pain they were for Moses. And Moses oftentimes goes, they're complaining to God, or they're complaining to Moses, Moses, what have you done? Let us out here to die? And Moses is going to God, God, what have you done? Let me out here to die with these people? Why? I'm sick of them already. But here's the point. A life without faith brings us a miserable existence. It is our faith that raises us up out of our misery. It is our faith that gives us the courage to press on. It is our faith that gives us the hope that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, that there is a destination at the end of the wilderness, that there is a God that is guiding us. We too have the same choice as the Israelites, as the Hebrews. Will we continue to do things our way? Will we continue to wander endlessly through our lives with only our own sense of direction to go on? Because we're too afraid to trust in God? Or will we submit our lives wholly to God and trust that God knows best? Will we follow God's lead, or will we follow our own? I don't know about you, but I know in my life, anytime I followed my own lead, it hasn't turned out so good. In fact, I had left the church, I wanted to be a computer programmer, and in my pursuing being a computer programmer, I ended up having to go work as an iron worker so Bernie could finish her nursing school, and then I went back to being a computer programmer, got a job, that job went bankrupt, couldn't find a job, until I finally broke down and said, okay, God, clearly something's not right. And And it was then that I decided to answer the call. I could have been ordained by now had I answered the call when God asked me to answer the call. Now, that wilderness journey defines who I am today, so I don't begrudge that. And you know what? The wilderness journey of the Israelites for 40 years, you better believe that defined their character by the time they did reach the promised land. But boy, do I know that it was me who kept me wandering, not God. So will we follow God's lead, or will we follow our own? Tonight, God is calling you to renew your faith, to renew your life of faith, to remember God's lordship. Not a term we think about very often, but God's lordship over your life. So for a moment, I would just like us to silently reflect on that call and on our own response, whatever it is. Let us silently reflect. God is calling you. To what? Only God can tell you. But God is calling you. Answer that call. Step out in faith and answer